I want to finally weigh in on what I believe is the accurate truth, the Napoleon Hill concept of accurate thinking, not what we wish it was, not what we think it should be, but the way things really are. And today I want to use the discipline of accurate thinking to tell you what I believe the truth is about the great badass coach Bill Belichick and why he has been essentially banished from the NFL for the time being. Myself, as a former professional hockey coach, I was fired after 2.5 seasons coaching minor pro as a head coach, assistant general manager. I understand pro sports from having my feet in the game. I've also owned 2 different junior hockey franchises, so I wore the hat of owner and president of those 2 teams. So I have a unique, to say the least, perspective. I've been a pro head coach, I've been a general manager, and I've been a franchise team owner. So for the last couple of weeks, I've listened to the talking heads and the know-nothings and the former pinhead low IQ athletes talk about the reason that one of the greatest coaches of all time did not get a head coaching job for this coming season. How in the world can the arguably greatest coach in NFL history, six Super Bowls, not be hired by one of the NFL teams this year after, I don't know what you want to call it, resigning or stepping away in New England? How is that possible? And the normies parroted everything you'd expect, right? Belichick, Tom Brady was the reason he won. The game has passed him by. He's too old. He's too stubborn. His philosophy is old. We need the new shiny product. We need the sexy new offensive coordinator or the sexy new defensive coordinator that you're not going to attract to your franchise unless you give him the head coaching job. If you're going to hire the wizards, the young wizards in the game today, you're going to have to offer them a head coaching position, even if they don't have the ability to lead and be a head coach. And they just go on and on. The normies just, basically stating the obvious. The way I see it, and by the way, I love Bill Belichick as a coach. I study great coaches in history. Everybody from Fred Shiro, Scotty Bowman, Tom Landry, Jimmy Johnson, Mike Krzyzewski, Bobby Knight, great baseball managers, great NBA coaches, Pat Riley. I've studied the college coaches, the Nick Sabans, the Bear Bryants, the Vince Lombardis, all of the NFL guys, NHL head coaches, you name it. I'm fascinated by the great leaders, and you find a lot of the greatest leaders in the history of the world in sport. They're natural coaches, natural leaders. So Belichick is up near the top in my book. I've read everything there is to read on Belichick. I know what he's good at. I know what he's not good at. But the guy is a badass winner, six-time champion. And he did indeed actually draft Tom Brady. So there's that as well. But the thing I want to share, the truth that I want to share today, is something that's never ever been discussed, at least not from anything I've heard on anti-social media or the fake news or, any of these progressive sports shows, ESPN, whatever, is that even head coaches, Hall of Fame coaches like Bill Belichick, eventually they go lame. We've all talked about how employees go lame, managers go lame, athletes go lame, coaches go lame, and even personally, you can go lame yourself. There's been several times where I've been in different industries where I've gone lame, and I looked in the mirror and said, I need to do something different. I'm bored, I'm stale. This is not something that I love doing, that I'm obsessed with anymore. I just went, you just go lame. You go mentally lame. You can go physically lame. You no longer have that level of joy for what you're doing. But Belichick still has massive joy for the game. I don't see that. He's a 20-hour guy. That guy works on football. He thinks about football for 20 hours a day. He goes home. He sleeps for 2, 3, 4 hours, and he goes back to work. And he does it 12 months a year. And I mean, the guy eats, sleeps, and breathes football just like his father did. So it's not about passion. It's not about obsession. The guy can outwork any wet behind the ears new age coach. That's not the issue. What I've experienced in my own personal life as an entrepreneur and as a pro coach is that sometimes part of going lame is starting to believe that you're better than you really are. This is something that's rarely discussed in circles where you have top 1% of 1% super achievers like Bill Belichick. But you know, year after year, you're told that you're a Hall of Famer, that you're winning, 6 titles in a decade. They talk about dynasty. They talk about your greatness. They talk about your genius, greatest defensive mind in history. You can do no wrong, right? When you're winning, you can do no wrong. But then to win for a decade and a half, well, that's next level. I just found in the hockey business, I had the privilege for a few years of having the #1 goaltender in our league. So when I was coaching and owning the team, I had the privilege of having the best goaltender in our entire league. #1, the best. The thing about hockey is your most valuable player is your goaltender. If you have it, you have a chance to win. If you don't have goaltending, you're dead in the water. No chance. Football is a quarterback's league, right? You know that. If you have a rock star quarterback, you have a chance. If you do not have a capable quarterback and leader, you have no chance. And that's what you saw over the last several years since Brady left New England. I mean, you start to think you're a better coach. You start to think you're a better CEO. You start to think you're a better leader sometimes when you have all the right pieces in place. This happened to me in the hockey business with goaltending. I mean, I could do no wrong for a handful of years. I mean, we wouldn't lose a single game after Christmas. We never lost 2 games in a row for 6 straight years. And then, you win a championship and you win regular season records and you've got the best goals against average. And all of a sudden, I start to believe that I'm better than I am. I'm really nailing this. I've got the Midas touch in coaching. I've got the Midas touch. I'm drafting the right players. I'm creating the right culture. I'm coaching these guys. I'm making a difference. I'm the man. I'm the alpha male. I'm the leader. I'm the badass champion. And the more you believe this, I think the more susceptible you become to going lame. In other words, it's not a far stretch when you're winning 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Super Bowls with the same quarterback, it's very similar to my experience thinking I'm a lot better coach than I am, because I have a goaltender that saves our bacon every night. You don't think about it. You're like, man, we got it all here, and I'm doing a great job coaching this team. See, that's the thing. All of a sudden, like I believe in Belichick's situation, you start to believe that you're better than you are. And it's just human nature to follow this route where it's like, you know what? It's more me than anything else. And I'm sure Brady felt the same way. He's like, you know, Bill's a good coach for me, but it's probably more me than him. And then it builds arrogance, right? I did the same thing as Belichick at the amateur level, where I let that guy walk. So our goaltender, I'm like, I don't need that. I don't need him. I'm not gonna answer those demands. I'm not gonna give in to those demands. And you let that franchise player, that goaltender, that pitcher, that quarterback walk, because you think you're so great, right? You've got the Midas touch. Somebody else can do it. Somebody else can do that job for less money, less headache, less problems, and you're going to do just as well. And that's where the arrogance and entitlement comes in. It's I call it corporate cancer. It's poison. It's absolute rat poison in your thinking. But it's not just players who are guilty of this. It's coaches and leaders like Bill Belichick can fall into it as well and go mentally lame. So all of a sudden, you let a guy like Brady walk. How the fuck do you let that happen? You let that happen by talking to your owner, Robert Kraft, and saying, you know what? I think we've got his best days. We've had his best days. I think that Brady's best days are behind him. I think that we have such an incredible culture. We have such an incredible system. I think that we can plug somebody else in. I think we can save ourselves a boatload of money, and we can still win. That's the conversation, I guarantee you, was had between Belichick and Kraft when they let the all-time greatest quarterback, Tom Brady, walk out the door. How in the hell? I don't give a shit if there's problems, you know, he's sick of Bill, Bill's sick of him. You got to make that work if you understand how important he is to winning. But that's where the arrogance came in. That's where the Belichick arrogance came in. The arrogance that makes you a great head coach, a Hall of Fame coach, is also the arrogance that can bring you down. So all of a sudden you have that, well, I've got the Midas touch, so I can plug in Cam Newton. We can make some adjustments, but it's the Patriot way. It's the Patriot way that'll make all the difference. Well, you see after a handful of seasons, multiple quarterbacks losing, no playoff appearances, that I'm sorry, it's not just the Patriots way. It's not just a system where you plug in anybody, even an aging or average quarterback. All of a sudden you start to see that, wow, Brady was a massive part of this. And by then it's too late. By then it's too late. So arrogance crumbles corporations. Arrogance crumbles small businesses. Arrogance crumbles sports teams. Arrogance can even crumble families. When we fall into that thinking that we're better than we are. And I went through the same thing when I said, you know, we're different. We have a culture where, you know, we can put a different goaltender in there and we're still going to win. We're still going to have an opportunity to win, and we can let this person walk. And then you're standing behind the bench, you know, the next season, and you're 2 games into the year, and you're like, we're fucked. I ain't the coach I thought I was. I'm not the next coming of Nick Saban. I'm not the next Scotty Bowman. And then it reminds me of what the great Red Berenson, Michigan's Hall of Fame college hockey coach, said. You know, more times than not, he said, the team with the best players getting off the bus will win. The team with the best players getting off the bus will win. I mean, Scotty Bowman had the horses. You got to have great coaching to coach great players. You know, Jimmy Johnson was a great coach who had great players. You know, Mike Krzyzewski was an incredible recruiter, an incredible coach who had great players. Bobby Knight back in the day, great coach, great players. Saban has the best players getting off the bus. It takes a great coach to build and win with great players. It's as difficult to win with great players as it is with mediocre in some cases. So those are all great coaches who recruited and built great teams, and then they coach them. But I'm telling you, the day you wake up as a CEO or a founder or a father or a coach and you think that you're better than you are, losing just picked up the check and left town. If all of a sudden, you know, losing's no longer, winning no longer taking your phone calls, as Tim Grover would say, losing just picked up the check and said, see you later. So, you know, Belichick's a difficult guy to work with, but that's not the reason the Houston didn't get a job. It wasn't because of his reputation with the media. It wasn't his, you know, he wants too much power. If he had won right up until this year, owners don't give a shit about that stuff. They look at that stuff when you're a winner. They say he's eccentric. That's what they say. When you're not winning, they say, oh, he's weird, strange, and demanding. So he went from mysterious and eccentric to he's just a pain in the ass. And, you know, that's a small portion of it. But at the end of the day, you have owners that believe he can't win. They believe he can't do the general manager's job. They don't believe he can draft the right players. And they don't believe that he can win without the next Tom Brady. So I believe, you know, that a year will certainly humble a person. I'm not sure if I don't think Belichick's done coaching. But he's not going to get a general manager head coaching job combination. And I think this year, whether he haunts television or whatever he does, he'll be the last to say it, but it'll be a humbling experience. And I mean, you let a guy like Brady walk out the door, that's the #1 signal that you think you are greater than you actually are. And we all make that mistake. I mean, in business, I let one of my top salesmen walk one time. And, you know, some of those guys are pains in the ass, right? Champions are pains in the ass. They're outliers. They're rainmakers. They're moody. That's what makes them so great. And I let a guy like that walk out the door. And I was overconfident. And I thought I was better than I was. And I let him walk out in the insurance business. I'm like, I'll replace him by tomorrow. It's my marketing that's most important. It's my flyers and my postcards and my videos. Anybody can sit in that chair. I had that Belichick mindset where I'm like, anybody can sit in that chair. I'm more important. Those people you can plug in and out. And in most cases you can. But you don't plug in and out a quarterback like Tom Brady. You don't plug in a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes. You don't, you know, plug in a player like a Michael Jordan, the greatest of all time. So all of a sudden, you know, this guy walks, I'm being cheap. He walks out the door and you lose your #1 producer, and it ends up costing you hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost production. And why does it happen? Looking back, it's the same as a Brady, where you thought, you know, everyone's replaceable, and your greatest, most talented performer and producer walks out the door. So it's an interesting thing to see a person think that they're greater than they are, make decisions based on thinking you're better than you are. Arrogance is a dangerous thing in business. As my dad said, you want to show up as the most confident person on planet Earth, the most confident person on Earth, and you want to be the most humble. And if you know my dad, he's the most confident man in the room. But people also look at my dad and love and are attracted to his humility. And he just has this certainty about him where he's comfortable in his own skin. He's extremely confident in his abilities, 90 years young and going, but he doesn't have an ounce of arrogance because he's never, as far as I've known, overestimated his own abilities. He's always given credit where credit is due. He's always admitted his shortcomings and weaknesses, and he's always given praise and credit to the people in his life that brought him even higher levels of winning. So it's just a fascinating story. The football gods have spoken. We have that saying in hockey, the hockey gods will always right a wrong. And it's just amazing, like the great Fred Shero said, two-time Stanley Cup winning coach with the Philadelphia Flyers, the great Freddie the Fog Shero, had a great saying. He coached the Broad Street Bullies to 2 straight Stanley Cups in the 1970s. And Freddie Shero used to say, you know, life is like sport. One day you're drinking the wine, the next day you're picking the grapes. And if that isn't the situation with Bill Belichick after winning 6 Super Bowls and being the apple of Robert Kraft's eye and every Patriot fan in America, and here he is a handful of years later without Tom Brady, and he's certainly picking the grapes. He's not drinking the wine, at least not for now. Brady, I mean, going to Tampa, that was the ultimate cleaner move. He was like, okay, I'm not appreciated here. I want to prove a point that I can win without Bill. Our relationship has been deteriorating. I feel that's on a coach too. Like as a coach, I've always said it's not 50-50. It was more my responsibility to get along with good players, good athletes and good people. It wasn't, you know, I didn't have a 50-50 relationship with my blue chip 18 and 19-year-old players. I put more of the responsibility on me to be the mature adult in the situation, and especially if you want to win. And in that case, I mean, Bill Belichick's getting paid tens of millions of dollars. I don't care what you got to do or how much you got to humble yourself. If I own that team, I mean, you got to do what you got to do within realm of self-respect and keep that guy. I mean, Tom Brady, from, you know, great teammate, great guy. I mean, not your typical star, not your entitled, selfish and lazy superstar, not by any means. Just a real solid team leader. Nobody's going to outwork Brady. Nobody can outwork Brady. He's first in, last to leave. That's why he has the ultimate respect of his teammates. But in terms of leadership, I mean, you can't ask for more than that. How a coach can't, or how a coach and owner can let that type of greatest of all time walk out the door, I have no clue. You know, there'll come a day when Patrick Mahomes, maybe the game has passed him by. Maybe in another 10 years, he's taken so many hits that Father Time's undefeated, right? For all of us. And there's lots of situations in sport and business where people, their expiry date is long past due. And you cut the rope and you swift sword them and they're gone. And that's what Belichick should have done if that was the case with Brady. But that wasn't the case because of how he takes care of his mind, his body, his mental health, his spiritual health. This is a guy that was far from done. And the exclamation mark on that bad decision was the fact that he goes to a good Tampa team, not a great Tampa team, provides championship leadership and leads them to a Super Bowl, his 7th. That's a bad decision. That's all you need to know about, if you're an owner, saying, how the fuck did we let that guy leave our facility? I don't care what it takes. That had to be made work. And there again, that's the arrogance of going lame. The other thing I'll comment about here that nobody talks about before I let you go is, why the Patriot way, and I've studied everything there was, every book about this. Belichick loved the fact, he called it the Patriot way, right? Well, it wasn't the Belichick way, and it wasn't the Robert Kraft way. Robert Kraft had the worst franchise in the NFL when he brought in Parcells before that. So Robert Kraft knew jack shit about winning football games. He had to hire, to his credit, he brought in Parcells, who turned it around. Worst team in the NFL, worst organization. And then, of course, Belichick, and the rest was history. But here's the thing. It's called iron in the room. Iron in the room. And this is really important, okay? So when you think about all the teams, the 6 Super Bowls that Belichick and Brady won, and all of a sudden the media is like, oh, Bill's such an amazing leader and Bill's such a taskmaster and disciplinarian, but all these guys in the NFL, they want to play, they want to suck it up and play for the legend. And this stuff gets way overblown, right? Well, here's the difference between a team with Brady as quarterback. I'm talking about inside the room now. I call it, and Mark Andre's aware of this, the iron, the leadership iron in your room. So I read a chapter one time on, their receivers, the Patriots, they had won a couple of Super Bowls, but their receiving core was not the greatest, kind of similar to what Kansas City's going through. So Belichick says, he's talking to some other GMs and he's like, who's the best receiver that we could add? But he's a perennial pain in the ass, okay, is Randy Moss. And they show this on that documentary on the team where, nobody wants Randy Moss. They don't, even Minnesota doesn't want him anymore. He's had problems since college with drugs. He's just one of these guys who's, he doesn't show up and it's all about him and all this other stuff. So he doesn't normally fit in the Patriot way. Well, guess why that worked for the Patriots? You get to add a guy for next to nothing. He's clearly, when he wants to play, Randy Moss is one of the most talented athletes in the NFL at the time. So you add this Pro Bowl level receiver to your team, but it only works because of who? Tom Brady. It doesn't work because of Belichick. He doesn't give a fuck about Belichick. He's no different than the Minnesota Vikings coach. Okay, Randy Moss doesn't care about any coach, but he has the ultimate respect for who? Tom Brady. That's the iron in the room. Tom Brady delivers the Belichick message. So the thing is all of a sudden you don't have the GOAT in your room. Well, like every day Brady's in there. Oh, don't worry about Bill. This is how we win. Just do your job, do your job, do your job. That's the message that a great champion takes to the other players. That's like Jordan, handling Rodman. There was enough iron in the room that they could bring in Dennis Rodman and put up with that nonsense for a couple of years, win a couple more championships, and then tell him to hit the bricks. Well, that's the same in New England. But now with Brady gone, you bring in a guy like anybody like that, and all of a sudden you don't have the iron in the room that you need for those guys to step in line. I've done that a handful of times. When we won the Barclay Cup League Championship in 2019, I went to guys like Mark Andre, he was an assistant coach, and I went to our captains and I said, listen, we have an opportunity to bring in the leading scorer in our league, and we knew this player well. I said, we're going to have to sacrifice some of our future, but this guy could either put us over the top or he could be a cancer inside here and ruin everything on our drive for a championship. And I sat there with my captains, and the question I said is, do we have enough iron in the room that this guy who had all kinds of problems on and off the ice, will he be able to conform in our championship culture? And those guys immediately answered, I mean, no problem whatsoever. There's 22 other guys in this room that know how to do things the right way. And there's enough iron in the room that there's no possible way this guy is going to step out of line, and he didn't. And we ended up winning the Barclay Cup, and guess who was the playoff MVP? This 20-year-old player that we brought in at the trade deadline. We had enough leadership. I had a Tom Brady style as a captain, and we had enough iron that this guy just showed up, played his best hockey for 3 months, and then we win a championship as a result. Same thing with these guys, like, you know, Belichick. He asked Brady at the time. He's like, Aaron Hernandez, and Aaron Hernandez, dead and buried now, was in prison when he died. Aaron Hernandez, Belichick asked Urban Meyer, who was the coach at Ohio State at the time. He's like, should we draft this guy? Should we draft this guy? His talent is off the charts, right? Hernandez is a super talent. And even Urban Meyer, of all coaches, says, don't touch him, Bill. You don't want this guy in your locker room. You don't want him around your team. He's surrounded with bad people, bad guys, bad actors. So what does Belichick do? He goes and selects Hernandez. Hernandez had a short but pretty decent career, other than killing people on the side on his off days. And why do you think a guy like Hernandez actually fit in and helped them win a couple of Super Bowls? Because Brady ruled the roost. Because Brady took the message to a guy like that and said, you know what? You won't be stepping out of line, at least around us, because so much leadership and iron in the room. Same thing, you know, you add a Randy Moss and it works. You have a Hernandez around as a draft pick and it works. I mean, right up until the very end. I mean, he's adding players, and he's coming to Tom Brady and he's saying, can we deal with this person? You know, can we? The Dennis Rodmans of the world. And that's what Phil Jackson came to Michael Jordan and said, we need some rebounding help. We need some grit. We need some toughness. Can you work with Dennis Rodman? And then you have a guy like Michael Jordan who says, you know what? I can deal with the devil as long as we win. And he literally managed Rodman over the next couple of seasons to add a couple more championship rings. But it just shows you the power of player leadership. And if you get arrogant and you think it's all about you, you add the wrong players to the locker room, and then your culture is changed, your business culture is changed. It's just completely different. Man, we can all personally go lame by thinking that we're better than we actually are. That is the truth about, that's my biased and unsolicited opinion about one of the greatest coaches of all time, period, in any sport, and why he's been iced out of the NFL for now. Something to keep in mind as we look at the great people around us is staying humble, keeping our accurate thinking, keeping our heads, and understanding, you know, seeing people for how valuable they really are and not overestimating our own talents. I put a list below there. When you're ready, whenever you're ready, if you want my help, if you want more of my help with wealth, with marketing, with fitness, with marriage, with peak performance, whatever you want to call it, down below is a list of the products that I've created that you can consider purchasing. My book, my newsletter, my Done For You program, and my mastermind, especially my Email Millions mastermind. So the guys are up here working on the lawn, so I gotta say goodbye. But that is the badass truth about the great Bill Belichick and why he has been frozen out of the NFL for now. 2 words that changed my life, 2 words that'll change yours. Be relentless.